Hello everyone, my name is Akash and today we will be dealing with an important topic from our international relations perspective, that is Indo-China relations. So let's get started straight away. Okay, so before we start analyzing the present context of the Indo-China relations, let us first get to know about the history of the relations. Okay, so Indo-Chinese relations, if we have to talk about the historical context, then we had certain India was a land where Buddhism was born. Okay, and then this religion got exported, in the sense it was transmitted to various other countries. China was one of them. Okay, and then in the later centuries, that is in the 5th and 6th century ADs, when we had the Gupta Empire and the Harshvardhana empires in India. So at that point of time, there were many Chinese pilgrims who visited India to understand what Buddhism is. So Yuan Sang is one of the names in that regard. Okay, so he visited India at the time of Harshvardhana, and he for studying what is Buddhism and what was the land of Buddha. Okay, so Indo-China relations can be traced back to those times also, when Buddhism was in vogue, and many Chinese pilgrims came to India to study Buddhism. Okay, after that point of time, then we come to the recent modern context of the Indo-Chinese relations. So, in the year 1947, we all know India got independent, and just 2 years down the line, in the year 1949, it was China who became independent after a communist revolution. So, India became independent as a democratic nation, whereas China became independent as a communist nation. Okay, so basically, their fundamental ideologies are very different. India being a democratic nation, China was purely a communist nation. Okay, initially, the ties between the two nations at the start were very good. So in 1955, we had a very famous agreement known as the Panchashil Agreement, which was signed between India and China. Okay, so Panchashil Agreement, it is basically there are 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, which are mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, mutual non-aggression, mutual non-interference, equality and mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence. So these can be said. This Panchashil Agreement can be said to be the founding agreements on which the Indo-China relations started to develop. Okay, but however, in the coming years, in the relations were not that good, because slowly and steadily China had started occupying Tibet. It has started to tighten its grip on Tibet, and because of which the then leader of Tibet, and now the Tibetan leader in exile, Mr. Dalai Lama, he took an asylum in India, and India granted asylum to Dalai Lama in 1959. Now, this didn't go very well in the books of China. Okay, China thought that India is supporting its rival. Okay, so at that point of time, what happened? There was the sourness between the relations of India and China started to increase. Okay, and this eventually culminated in the 1962 Indo-China War, where unfortunately India lost the war, and China occupied the Aksai Chin region of India. Okay, now, post 1962 war, the relations between India and China froze. There were no bilateral meetings, no visits of the foreign ministers, nothing at all. So there was a total freeze on the Indo-China relations. This freeze came to an end only in the year 1988, which was the time of Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. He was a Prime Minister of India. So 1988 onwards, we see that there were initiatives taken by both the sides, India as well as China, to improve the bilateral relations. And post 1988, we see a regular exchange of high-level meetings between both the countries. Okay, so post 1988, efforts were taken to improve the relation between the two countries. Now let's come to the year 2017. Now in the year 2017, what happened? There was a border standoff at Doklam. Okay, now Doklam is an area which is at a tri-junction of India, Bhutan, and China. Okay, so a border standoff started there. So again, that was another instance where there was a gulf, or the gulf between the India-China relations started to widen. basically upon the border issues. And now, in order to, this border issue was solved within the next 6, 7, 8 months. And after that, in order to again improve the relations and to have peaceful coexistence, as was stated in the Panchashil Agreement, there were two informal summits which were held. The first summit was held in 2018, which was known at a place called as Wuhan in China. So this particular summit is also known as the Wuhan Summit. And after the Wuhan Summit, India, there was a second informal summit which was held in India at Mamallapuram, which is a place in Tamil Nadu. So this second informal meeting was in continuance to the Wuhan Consensus. So now you can observe that both the sides are taking steps to elevate their relations to a higher level. Okay. However, these steps were very limited, because after this Mamallapuram meeting, just months after the Mamallapuram meeting, the standoff at Ladakh started. Okay, so that's standoff continued for almost a year, and now only recently it has been the standoff has ended. Okay, so this was the entire timeline of the evolution of Indo-China relations right from 1947 to 2020. So one can, of course, analyze that the relations have not been so good. It has been a series of ups and downs, mostly characterized by downs only. Okay, we also have fought a war. We have our border issues. We have had a couple of border standoffs in the recent times. Okay, plus China is getting close to Pakistan. So even that is not seen in good books by India, because that opens up India's vulnerability to a two-front war. Okay, so even that is not seen good by India. Therefore, historically, right from 1947 till 2021, the relations have been a series of ups and downs, mostly dominated by a lot of downs. Okay, and the cultural context, if you have to write about the cultural links, you can always give a reference to Yuan Sang and Fa Hien, who were the Chinese travelers who visited India at the times of the Gupta Empire and the Harshvardhana time. Okay, so that was a brief analysis of how the Indo-Chinese relation has evolved so far. Okay, post that, now let's come into the present context. So in the present context, we're going to analyze the relations between India and China under three spheres. One is the area of cooperation, other is the area of competition, and the third one is the area of conflict. So mostly we can categorize, or we can bifurcate with the relations of India and China into these three aspects. So the first aspect is that of cooperation. Okay, so in fact, you find very less arenas or very less avenues where India and China really cooperate with each other. Some of them are mentioned on the screen. So both India and China, they are against the protectionist policies of the West. For example, the WTO reforms. Now, WTO, or World Trade Organization, what is happening is there is a vacancy at its appellate board. Okay, so you have WTO appellate board. In this dispute redressal mechanism, you have an appellate board of WTO, wherein you appoint the judges to solve any disputes that are arising between two trading countries. Okay, however, this particular appointment is done through the consensus of all the WTO member countries, and this has been opposed by United States of America. So United States of America has been blocking the appointment of the judges to the appellate board of the dispute redressal system of WTO. So India and China are on the same page with this regards. They are against the protectionist policies of the West. They feel that the West has been dominating most of the global institutions, such as the United Nations or the WTO or the IMF. Okay, so both of them are trying to alleviate, or both of them are against these protectionist policies of the West. So this is the first area of cooperation where both India and China are cooperating. The second area of cooperation is the fight against the global climate change. Okay, so we all are very well aware of the fact that the climate change is a global disaster, which is coming which is set to come in some of the years to come, right? So now what has happened is there was a Paris Climate Deal which was signed in the year 2016, which calls for nationally determined contributions. Okay, so both India and China have given their NDCs. And according to the emission gas report of the UNEP, India is only one of those nations which is on track to achieve its NDCs on time. Okay, so this is one of the major cooperation areas. Plus, recently, even China has agreed to the fact that it will try and go carbon neutral by the year 2060. So that is a very good commitment from the Chinese side. So both India and China are in favor of fight against climate change. So this is the second area of cooperation between these two nations. Again, the third area of cooperation is reforms in the global governance. For example, IMF quota reforms. Both the nations want to increase their quota. However, this has time and again been resisted by the Western nations. So again, both of them are very much on the same page whenever we talk of reforms in the global governance. Plus, these nations, so whenever there is a regional issue arising, okay, so India and China, they always have been meeting on the sidelines of the G20 or the BRICS SCO, that is Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the RIC trilateral meet, where RIC stands for Russia, India, China. Okay, so both these nations have been making very good use of these forums in order to either solve the disputes or to come up with some new agenda, some new development plan. For example, under the BRICS, both the nations have taken, in not only both the nations, but all the members of the BRICS have taken an initiative to set up the new development bank, okay, which would provide developmental loans to the developing nations of the grouping of BRICS. Okay, so now these groupings, they provide an avenue for both the nations to come together to, if they have any disputes, they can settle the disputes on these multilateral forums peacefully. Okay, so these are the four areas of cooperation where both India and China have been cooperating very well. Okay, now areas of competition. Competition is where both the countries are competing with each other. Okay, so the very first thing is the string of pearls. Now, basically, what is string of pearls? String of pearls is a theory which says that China is occupying important bases in the Indian Ocean region in order to circumvent India in the Indian Ocean region. For example, it has right from the occupation of Gwadar port in Pakistan. Okay, from there to Djibouti port, to coming down to Maldives, then to Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, then to Chittagong port in Bangladesh. So it has been occupying key ports in the Indian Ocean region so as to surround India in the Indian Ocean region. So this policy of China is known as the string of pearls policy. Okay, so it through string of pearls, what China wants to do is it wants to circumvent India in the Indian Ocean region so that tomorrow, if so that it can dominate Indian Ocean region, and tomorrow if any unforeseen war breaks out between India and China, so China can have a dominance at the sea also. Presently, the condition is that the Indian Navy dominates the Indian Ocean, right? So in order to break this domination, China has planned a string of pearls theory, wherein it tries to occupy the important ports on the Indian Ocean or on the littoral nations in the Indian Ocean region, so that it can surround India with its string of pearls. In stark contradiction to this, India has launched its initiative, which is called as Sagar. And Sagar stands for Security and Growth for All in the region. So India's perspective for Indian Ocean region, or India's policy in the Indian Ocean region, has been that of security and growth for all. So India doesn't seem to be a monopoly in the region. India always is in the favor of a pluralist world where it feels that everyone is equal and everyone has equal opportunities to grow. Okay, so that is India's initiative of Sagar. Sagar stands for security and growth for all in the region. So basically, it wants to secure all the trade routes in the Indian Ocean region, right from the Malacca Strait to the Strait of Hormuz to the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, so that these trade lines remain open for all the nations who want to trade here. So there is security for all, and using these trade lines, there is a using these trade lines, all the nations grow combinedly or collectively. Okay, so that is the one of the most important things of Sagar: security and growth for all in the region. Apart from this, we have economic competition between the two nations. Competition in the sense, see, both of them are emerging economies of the world. Okay. However, China has taken a leap forward, because if we have to talk about the size of the Chinese economy, it is roughly around $14 trillion, whereas Indian economy is just roughly about $2.5 trillion. Okay, so now there is a huge gap in the GDP size of both the nations. However, both of them are emerging economies, and both of them have emerged as the supreme powers of the Asian continent. Okay, so therefore both of them now are trying to increase their economic base. So one of the major issues here is that India has the highest trade deficit with China, which roughly amounts to about $55 billion. Okay, so this is another area where both of them are competing, and both of them are trying to gain an upper hand towards each other. Okay. Yeah, so for economic competition also, what steps India has taken, that becomes important from the economics perspective. For example, the reforms in the labor laws, or the new FDI policy norms, wherein it has diluted certain FDI policy norms and allowed automatic, or allowed FDI through automatic route. Okay, so all these policies are very important when basically they become important from the economic perspective also. So you can also use some further points from there and put it here. Okay, so basically economic competition and what steps India have taken to increase its economic competition. Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, these all are examples of the same. Okay, dream to become a $5 trillion economy, again an example of same. So all these initiatives are taken by India to emerge out as a manufacturing hub. Okay, also during the times of COVID last year, when the entire country, when there was entire a negative wave against China, that COVID has emerged from China. So most of the multinational companies tried to shift their base out of China. So the most feasible location for them outside China, where you have cheap labor available, is India. Okay, so in that sense also, both the nations are competing for additional things, additional manufacturing avenues. Okay, so economic competition is one area. Integration into global supply chains is another area where there is competition. And the most recent example of that was RCEP, or Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Unfortunately, India could not join this particular bloc, which is a free trade bloc of 10 Asian nations and its free trade partners. So 10 Asian nations plus their free trade partners are India, China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. So six free trade partners of ASEAN. So RCEP is a block of ASEAN plus six of its free trade partners. Unfortunately, India did not join this particular bloc because it had its own concerns regarding its service sector and its agriculture and dairy sector. These issues were remained unsolved, and therefore India could not join RCEP. However, China joining RCEP is not seen in good books for India, because again RCEP as a trade bloc provides China ample avenues to boost its economic growth, to find additional market and all that type of stuff. However, India is deprived of the same. Therefore, integration into global supply chains is another area of competition where both the areas are competing to get themselves integrated into the global supply chains. Last area of competition is investment in other nations. Now, as we know that India is not very strong on its financial prowess, right? As compared to China, of course. China believes in checkbook diplomacy. Now, what is checkbook diplomacy? China believes that it would provide funds to the emerging and developing nations, for example, the African nations, so that it can create good and cordial relations with them. However, in stark contradiction to this, India believes very much in soft power. Soft power in the sense, for example, India's investment in Afghanistan is one of the areas of this, wherein it has not only built the parliament of Pakistan, of Afghanistan, but it has also also ensured that through its soft power. For example, cricket is a soft power. The Afghanistan cricket team was given a stadium in Dharamsala to practice. So these are all examples of soft powers. So India very much emphasizes on soft power to build up its international relations, whereas China is a nation which believes in checkbook diplomacy. So this is another area of competition where both the nations are trying to enhance and improve their bilateral relations with other nations of the world. Okay, so this is an area of so these are the four areas of competition. Now comes the most interesting thing, where is the areas of conflict. Now these are ample in number, So first area of conflict is of course the border dispute, which I think everyone is aware of. For example, the Doklam crisis and the recent Ladakh standoff. So if I have to show, so these are the maps. So recently there was a standoff in the Galwan Valley region of Ladakh, where both the armies crashed, and also around the Pangong Tso Lake in Ladakh. Back in 2017, there was a standoff in the Doklam Plateau, which is a tri-junction of India, Bhutan, and China. Okay, so border disputes has been one area of conflict amongst these among India and China, because uh, see, first of all, the definition of what is the line of actual control is still not very clear. First thing, and before that, the Aksai Chin region was something which the China occupied after its 1962 war. So therefore, it is something which is occupied by China, and therefore the definition of where exactly line of actual control falls is unclear to both the sides. Second thing, the area of Arunachal Pradesh where the McMahon line goes. This particular area, for example, Arunachal Pradesh, China considers Arunachal Pradesh to be an extension of its territory only. So therefore, any development activity undertaken by India in Arunachal Pradesh or any military base set up in Arunachal Pradesh is not seen good by China. In fact, recently when the Defense Minister of India last year visited Arunachal Pradesh, when the actual conflict at LAC was going on, even that was not seen good by China. Okay, so these are the two areas of conflict. These are the two areas of conflict between the two nations. Okay. Yeah, so on whenever we are writing answers on international relations, especially India, China, drawing maps become very important. So therefore, if one draws a map highlighting what is the LAC, what is the McMahon line, where actually the conflict took place, so that really adds a lot of value to your answer. So highlighting and drawing the maps is very important. The next area of conflict is in increasing Chinese presence in India's neighborhood. Okay, India's neighborhood is a backyard of India. Okay, so where India sees that it is its area of influence. However, in the recent times, China has undertaken such policies wherein it has infiltrated into India's neighborhood. For example, through the Belt and Road Initiative or China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is just an extension of BRI, it has undertaken development activities in the Pakistan occupied region, which India considers as its sovereign territory. So this is not very well seen by India, and this is why India has restrained itself from joining the Belt and Road Initiative because of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which passes through POK, which India considers as its own sovereign territory. So that is one increasing Chinese influence. Apart from that, in Nepal, recently the Communist Party is in power. So even at that point of time, there are many Chinese influence. For example, another area of conflict between India and China is Chinese opposition to India's entry into global organizations such as UNSC. That should be Nuclear Suppliers Group. Okay, that is should be NSG. This is mistyped here. That does not enjoy its NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group, etc. So now India is trying to become a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. However, China has been using its veto power to disallow India in its entry into UNSC. Okay, so this is one of the major areas of conflict between India and China, that China using its veto power inappropriately to deny India an entry into United Nations Security Council's permanent bench. Okay, and the second is NSG. It's not, again I'm repeating, it's not NGO, it's NSG, which stands for Nuclear Suppliers Group. Okay, so yeah, China is also opposing India's entry into the Nuclear Suppliers Group. Recently, what has happened during the COVID crisis? So when the Ladakh standoff was going on, India took a slew of measures to oppose China. One of them was India banned Chinese apps, the trade imports decreased, and a slew of other measures. So one thing that China retaliated with was China had one cyber attack done on India, especially if you all have been reading newspapers. So the city of Mumbai, it went under a complete power down for 1 day. Okay, the metro, which is or the local trains, which are the lifeline of Mumbai, so they everything came to an halt. So this was reportedly a cyber attack, which was named as Red Eco, which was carried on by a Chinese group, which is called as ShadowPad. Okay, so this is another area of conflict where China is misusing the cyberspace and carrying on cyber attacks, because see, cyberspace has evolved or emerged as a new arena of warfare. Initially, warfare was limited only to land, air, water, but now space and cyber, these are two emerging arenas where majority of the nations are fighting. For example, you all might have considered about weaponization of space. So this is another area where conflicts happen. And because of the growing penetration of internet across the globe, and because many things happening on the World Wide Web, cyberspace is also becoming an important arena of warfare. And how is this warfare carried on? This warfare is carried on by undertaking cyber attacks. For example, even US carried on cyber attacks on Iran. So likewise, it was reported that ShadowPad, which is a Chinese-backed group, carried on a cyber attack called as Red Eco on India recently. So the entire city of Mumbai, there was a power off for the entire city of Mumbai for a day. Okay, so this is another area of conflict between India and China. Okay, so these are the 4 areas of conflict. So we have here in short understood about what are the areas of conflict, what are the areas of competition, and what are the areas of cooperation between these two nations. Okay, this was the map. Now, what is the way forward for this particular issue? So one of the areas of competition that we saw was key, the integration into global supply chains. For example, India getting out of RCEP, China getting an entry into RCEP, China leveraging its entry into RCEP, diversifying its export sources, and getting access to new markets. That is advantageous to China. But what about India? Because India didn't enter RCEP, so now India should, one of the way forwards to counter growing Chinese aggression is that India should foster itself or integrate itself with the global supply chains. Okay, so fostering itself or integrating with the global supply chains, one of the ways is that you uh, sign a lot of free trade agreements. For example, BTI. BTI is bilateral trade and investment agreement, which India and European Union are on the verge of signing. So there are negotiations going on. So likewise, India should get into agreements with a lot of other trade blocs so that it gets integrated itself in the global supply chain. Next, the next way forward is that India, see, the Prime Minister had declared a noble vision of making India a $5 trillion economy by the end of 2024-2025. Now, if India has to become a $5 trillion economy, one of the major sectors that really need a boost is the manufacturing sector. Okay, because we know that India's growth is characterized by the problem of missing middle. That is, from agriculture, we directly jump to services. Our manufacturing sector did not see that growth. Okay, so in order to achieve that phenomenal growth, India needs, or to achieve that GDP size of $5 trillion, our economy needs to grow at least 8% per year, at least 8%. Okay. Now, keeping in mind this at least 8%, we already have services sector which is up and running, but we need to boost our manufacturing sector. In order to boost the manufacturing sector, government has launched a lot of campaigns. Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat recently launched are 2 of the very noble initiatives in this regard. So Make in India, the goal of Make in India is that the contribution of the manufacturing sector to India GDP, which is at present at 16%, 16%, should be increased to 25%. So that is the aim of Make in India. Second is Atmanirbhar Bharat, where India is giving a self-emphasis on self-production. And how is it doing? It is doing by certain good schemes like production linked incentive scheme or liberalizing the FDI sector. Okay, self-manufacturing of defense equipments. All these are initiatives in this regard. So one of the major requirement for India to compete with China is that our economy should be at least as of the size, or our economy should at least be as strong as the Chinese economy. To make our economy that strong, the first step is that you integrate yourself with the global supply chains. Second step is that you increase your own capabilities. That is, you make your manufacturing sector your stronghold, like how services sector is your stronghold now. Make manufacturing sector your stronghold. So in that regard, government has launched these policies. Plus, the recent economic survey points out to a fact that we have to now move from make in India to assemble in India also. So that is also one of the way forwards that India is trying to integrate itself with the global supply chains. So this is another thing that you can add in your answers. Next way forward to counter China is India should focus on its neighborhood first policy. See, India's neighborhood is its strong area, okay, is its area of influence. It is India's backyard. So India should not allow China to infiltrate into this backyard. We have seen that through its checkbook diplomacy, through the Belt and Road Initiative, China has been able to influence Pakistan. It has been able to influence Nepal. It has been able to influence Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka recently, our current affairs is going on, where Sri Lanka has given its Colombo port, or the development of Colombo port city, to China. Okay, in previously, Hambantota port was leased out to China for a lease of 99 years. Okay, Maldives, before the present government of Maldives came in, Maldives was heavily inclined towards China, and there were a lot of Chinese investments into Maldives. However, with the change in regime in Maldives, the present regime in Maldives is India friendly. It has its policy of India first, and India in retaliation has helped Maldives to pay back the loans that it had taken that the previous regime had taken from China. Okay, so in order to counter China, one of the major initiatives that India has to follow is India needs to emphasize on its neighborhood first policy. India has to make crystal clear that its neighborhood is influenced and dominated by India. For this, regional initiatives such as SARC and BIMSTEC needs to be given a boost. Okay. In addition to this, local development projects such as Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal Highway, BBIN corridor, okay, that needs to be given a boost. And India should also make sure that whatever development projects it is carrying on in its neighboring countries, those development projects are carried on in time. They have minimum gestation period, okay, so that would improve, that would increase that trust in India. With India, the issue with India's development projects abroad is that they take a lot of time to complete. So whatever their gestation, because the gestation period is more, the cost of the infrastructure or the cost of the project increases, because of which that is not seen, that does not go in good books of the opposition of the opposition country, right? So therefore, India should emphasize on its neighborhood first policy. So in that regard, Nepal, which is its immediate partner, we have Nepal sees India, or Nepal is very apprehensive of India's big brother image. So that image, slowly and steadily, India needs to dilute that image and look towards Nepal on an equal footing and make sure that Nepal comes to India, or Nepal is sided by India. Okay, so all these, an emphasis on neighborhood first policy is the utmost requirement of the present day. Okay, that India emphasizes on its neighborhood first policy. Apart from this, we know at present, checkbook diplomacy is not our power. Okay, and our power historically has been soft power. For example, during the recent COVID crisis, when India spearheaded a vaccine development initiative, okay, so at that point of time, India exported its vaccines to not only to the neighboring nations, but also to nations as far as the nations in the South American continent and the North American continent. Okay, so India shall now see, soft power is India's strength. Okay, so India needs to leverage this strength and export, or make sure that it is improving its relations with the nations across the globe. So vaccine diplomacy is one very good example when you are using the term soft power in a recent context. Apart from this, whenever any Operation Manila was an operation which was carried on by India and Madagascar when Madagascar was hit by a cyclone. So such initiatives taken by India in the littoral nations which are littoral to the Indian Ocean. Okay, so that will help to build India's image in the Indian Ocean region, and so that the entire rim nations of the Indian Ocean, they have a very good image about India. So that is the use of soft power. Now, They say that to counter force, you need force, right? So to counter Chinese aggression, you require some sort of aggression, and this aggression will come from a very good initiative which is known as Quad. Quad stands for the Quadrilateral, which comprises of 4 nations, that is India, Australia, Japan, and United States of America. So these 4 nations have come together, formed this initiative in order to tame the Chinese dragon. Now, this Chinese dragon has been showing a lot of aggression, not only in the South China Sea, not only at the borders of India only, but also with many other nations. So in the South China Sea, you have islands called as Spratly, Parasil, Scarborough Shoal. Okay, China has been aggressively conquering these islands, even if they are outside its EEZ zone. Okay, so China open-endedly is following the UNCLOS law or United Nations Convention on the Law of Seas, and it is ensuring and it is trying to engulf a lot of territories. So in order to counter this force, you require an equivalent force. So that force would come through a multilateral grouping, which is nothing but Quad. So in the present day, in the coming days, if you want to tame the Chinese dragon, you need to bolster Quad. Okay, so empowering, strengthening Quad is important. So one of the major initiatives taken in the recent times was Australia was also included in the Malabar exercise, which India, Japan, and US carries on. It is a naval exercise. So even Australia was included at this time. So this is nothing but an initiative in this regard only. Plus, apart from these, if any disputes arise between India and China, so instead of going on to or undertaking such extreme measures such as border standoff or retaliatory tariff measures, one should make effective use of the multilateral organizations such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or the BRICS or the Russia-India-China Trilateral Forum in order to solve the disputes very amicably. Okay, so these were the way forwards in this regard. So that was a very short lecture on Indo-China relations. However, just let us have a quick revision of this. So initially we saw how the evolution of our relations has been right from 1947 to 2020. Beforehand, we also saw that Buddhism has been a common cultural link between the 2 nations, and Buddhist pilgrims such as Yuan Sang and Fa Hin, they have visited India in order to study Buddhism. So our relations date back to those times. However, post-independence, these have been the progression of India-China relations. It has been a series, if one analyzes this, it has been a series of ups and downs, mostly dominated by downs, wherein we have fought a war with China in 1962, and in the recent 5 years, we had 2 border standoff with China. Okay, plus the recent COVID pandemic, mostly it is seen that the virus of COVID-19, it emerged from the Wuhan lab in China. So even that caused an area of conflict. After that, we saw that we analyzed their relations into 3 aspects. One is cooperation, competition, and conflict. And and after that, we saw certain way forwards, or what can India do, what steps can India undertake in order to bolster its relation or its thing with China in order to counter China. Okay, so some of the initiatives was key integrate in the global supply chains, then improve your own strengths, that is improve your manufacturing. So initiatives such as Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat are in that regard. After that, emphasis on the neighborhood first policy so that your backyard is safeguarded. After that, extensive use of soft power such as vaccine diplomacy. Then to counter force by force, you require an organization such as the Quad, and we need to make use of the effective multilateral organizations in order to solve disputes amicably. Okay, so that was all regarding today's class. So thank you so much.